Episode 96, How Your Marketing Bias Can Hurt Your Results. In this episode, we dive deep into how marketing bias can undermine your local marketing efforts and overall marketing strategy. Many small business owners create marketing campaigns based on their own daily habits and preferences, but this approach often leads to missed opportunities and weak results. We discuss why you are not your customer. Repeat, we discuss why you are not your customer, how your target audience consumes local marketing differently than you, and why relying solely on personal assumptions can limit your success. You'll learn practical strategies for stepping out of your marketing bubble by analyzing real customer behavior and using data-driven insights to build more effective campaigns. This episode is designed to help you identify blind spots in your marketing approach and provide a solid framework for stronger results-driven local marketing decisions. Matt Hansen, how are you?
I'm good. This one's fun.
Matt Hansen has been in digital marketing since before it was a thing. I'm Jim Deedlow. I own a couple radio stations and some TV stuff. We're in marketing every day. And that is kind of the mission, is to provide some of that for the small and medium-sized business. Meet George. What's that mean?
So George, the reason we're talking about this today is 1 in 5 clients that I talk to has somebody in their office, in their store, in their building that comes to me and says, I want to do this because I do this, right? And George was one of, he was a nice guy, kind of a thorn in my side for years. He told me one time, I was doing this pretty big campaign, and he said, you should take all of your money and put it into HGTV. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense, George. Like that's not who our market is, who we're going after. And he pulled well, that's what we've always done and it's worked. And I said, okay, that's great for the clients that you've worked with, but let me pull the data for you on this. Let me pull the average person that watches HGTV. Let me pull all of this data for you, and we'll compare it to whom we're going after. Now, mind you, we were pushing content to a 3-state area, and George was wanting me to run HGTV nationwide. And the conversation that I had was, I don't think Hawaii is going to be a customer. And the conversation kept going, and George was telling me basically, like, it's irrelevant. They'll come here. I'm like, I'm pretty sure Hawaii's not coming to Indiana. Right? Like, unless they know somebody here, families here, whatever it may be. Like, you're in Hawaii. Like, I would stay in Hawaii. I hear this all the time. I heard it last night at 8 o'clock. I was on the phone with an agency buddy of mine, and he said the exact same thing. This person, has kind of their things that they want to do. 1 in 5 clients, I will literally have a conversation with, and they're like, I think we should do billboards. And I'll ask why. Well, I look at billboards all the time. I see them all the time. I drive all the time, and I see them all the time. Okay, it's great. I think we should be on Facebook. And I'll say that. Okay, why? Well, because, I'm on Facebook all the time, and that's where I get my news. Okay. Then you start to talk to them, and you say, well, who are you targeting? Well, I'm targeting, 18-year-olds. Okay, well, Facebook's probably not your best spot to be in. Yeah, but I'm on there all the time. And I hear this over and over and over again. And it's hard because even in I teach a media planning class, and it's one of the things that I tell my students all the time is you are going to hear this from clients. You're going to hear this from your boss. You're going to hear this from, people all the time. We need to do this because this is what I do. And, it's this bias that we live with. And, if you're talking about an audience, if you're talking, even in my own household, my wife and I are 2 years apart. We're in the same generation, right? So 2 years apart. You would think we would have the exact same habits, but we don't. She watches the news every night. She watches primetime TV through, the airwaves. If I watch TV at all, it's usually on demand, something that I want to watch, get it over with, and then I move on to something else. She's on Facebook all the time. I'm never on Facebook. You know, I'm on YouTube all the time. She's never on YouTube. She doesn't check email. I'm always on email, right? There's all of these differences that we have just in our own household. So to say that I'm targeting a 50-year-old, you can't say that, right? There are behaviors that you have to understand. So when I sit down with somebody and I start to let's really assess who you're targeting and the habits that they have and the content that they absorb. Many times people will have a bias. They're like, well, I'm always doing these things, and they let that guide their strategy. And what happens is they're missing the real places that they need to be. So that's what I want to talk about today.
So we're talking about a data set of one.
Right.
And then the person extrapolates their data set to the whole data set.
Right.
And yeah, I see it a lot here too, and I'm fighting it a lot.
Yeah.
Like even in my own building, I'm like, hey, let's get some data. And I do this, I do that, and I'm like, no, we cannot. That is natural in an organization. Mm-hmm. It's natural for students. I mean, we got Adriana; she doesn't necessarily do this, but I have people that go, I do this, I do that, and I'm like, but let's think globally on this thing. So, how do you convince the students that work here or younger employees you are not the customer?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple ways that I do this, right? So one, I look at them and say, are you happy with where your business is? And 9 times out of 10, I'll hear no. I'd like to be bigger. I'd like to grow. I'd like to sell more, right? And I'll say, okay, well, if we keep doing the same thing that we're doing, you're going to expect the same results, right? So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results, right? Clients or people that I've worked with will want to target a certain demographic, a certain lifestyle, a certain whatever it may be, and they don't pay attention to it. So what they do is I see this a lot with, a 65, 70-year-old business owner that is kind of at the end of, they want to hand it down to another generation. Maybe they want to sell the business, whatever it may be. And they look at it and they think about all the things that they do and they push it out there. And then you start to sit down with them and go, it's great. I understand where you're going with this, but you're now trying to get a younger customer. And those younger customers are doing things that you may not necessarily understand. So you need to hand that over. You need to realize, we need to start testing things. Because if I can tell you, baby boomer generation, huge, right? And now, the Gen Xers, we've been forgotten about, and, we're so small. But now we have this new generation with, lots and lots of people that are very digitally connected. And somebody may be scared of going on TikTok or something like that. They're like, oh, I don't understand it. I don't want to be on that. But things like TikTok and Instagram are making millionaires every single day because of access to a younger generation and the tools that are out there and all these different things. So the conversation that I have with most of these companies is just give me a small budget. Let's go test some things. And let's see what happens, right? So let's say that, and I've got a client in mind, and I'm not going to share who they are, but they do a lot with billboards. And they came to me years ago, and they said, we want to target a younger demographic. And I said, okay, well, we need to go digital. I know you're not doing anything. We need to go digital. Nah, I'm not too sure about that. And I said, let me put together a program for you. And we put together this elaborate website landing page, this whole customized experience that you were going to get once you came into the store. And outstanding campaign. Couldn't wait to run it. but they couldn't get out of their own way. I'm uncomfortable with doing it. And I said, why are you uncomfortable with doing it? And it was just like, that's not the way we do things. And I said, okay, understand the way you do things is where your revenues are today. If you want to get younger, if you want to get new customers that are from a much younger subset, you have to do something different. You cannot continue to do the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're a local company. We've had this conversation with JCPenney, with State Farm, with Mary Kay Cosmetics, like through, university stuff that we've done with those companies. They all understand that they have to change, they have to adapt, they have to do different things. But what ends up happening is you have that one individual in the office that says, we need to do it this way because we've always done it, or I prefer to do this because that's what I do. And what it does is it stifles that growth because you're stuck in a reoccurring thing, hamster wheel that's just spinning and spinning, and the revenues aren't going to generate because you're not getting out of your own way.
Why can't you just copy a competitor?
Because the competitors that you're looking at, and we've talked about this in different podcasts, they have different customers. They have different things that they're promoting. And quite honestly, you don't want to clone your competitors anyway, but you can take insights from what they're doing. But again, you have to understand your customers are unique to you. They have unique needs. And just because you're in the same industry or you sell kind of some of the same things doesn't necessarily mean they have the same needs, wants, and demands that their customers have.
So, once again, we're talking about mastering local marketing. Some of this airs live on the radio, so we got to sum up. We're talking about marketing bias, and really, I think it's at least partly directed at, say, the small to medium-sized business owner or intelligentsia in your organization. You may be 5 people, you may be 50, and people are like, man, this is what we should do because this is what I do. That's kind of the main part of it. But there are ways now, like 20, 30 years ago, you kind of had to go on those hunches and just try, do it, and that's all you really had. But now you got data for every possible thing, who your customer is, what your ROI on a certain spend would have been. I mean, you have data, probably too much data to consume, that you need AI to sort through the data for you, but that's a different conversation. But you do have that. So you can actually look at data and compare it to what you have assumed. Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
I did it this weekend. I was talking to Emily, who is our client for the digital marketing competition that we just wrapped up. And, we were talking. I said, what are your goals? And she said, well, I want to reach X revenue. And I literally went right back up the funnel with her. And I said, okay, well, we need to spend this amount of money on the digital side. And
by the way, we need to get her a proposal. I forgot already. Adriana, hand it to, she wants to do some advertising, and I just completely forgot about the lead. But anyways, go ahead.
That's all right. We're already talking. So,
all right, good enough.
When you look at traditional methods, right? I'm comfortable with doing newspaper and billboard. Okay, that's fine. But how do you, if you said I want to generate $1 million in revenue that I'm not doing right now, can you go to billboards and literally say, all right, well, here's how many billboards I need to generate $1 million in revenue? I can do that on the digital side, right? Because I can work the funnel back up, and I can figure that, I'm converting on my landing page 2 to 5%, maybe 10%, wherever you're at, and then my click-throughs on my ads is 2%. So you just work your way back up the funnel. You start to understand, like, all right, here's how many impressions I need in the digital space to generate this much traffic. Most people aren't comfortable with that. Let's be honest, right? They don't understand it. They think it's some
mumbo jumbo,
some black magic that I'm creating, and I'm going, it's just basic math that I'm showing you here, right?
Some guy who's running a print shop, and I have one in my head that I've dealt with many times. My age, older actually. He's like 69 years old, and they've been doing it a certain way, and there are certain assumptions about it. And he was able to cross the bridge over to believing in the data. Mm-hmm. And that is a big bridge to cross for many of the small and local, or small to medium-sized local businesses that we're talking about. The data is real. The data is there for you to use. Right. That's a tough mental one to go to.
Well, even in a print shop, I mean, he's probably doing a lot of mailings, and at that point you start looking at the mailings, right? So even when we used to do just simple postcards that we would send out for the home decor business, we knew that we would get, a certain percentage of people that would come in with the coupon or whatever, the free gift that we were giving away. They had to bring in the postcard, so we'd send out 2,000 postcards, however many would come back in store, and we collected all of those. So we knew what the response rate was. And then we tied those receipts that came in with those postcards to the postcard, and then we would look at the data and go, all right, well, we spent X on sending out a postcard to get Y. Data is out there. Use it. So, if you're uncomfortable with doing a mailer and I can produce real data to show you that this is going to work, how do you argue against that? One thing that I say to my students all the time is, you look at me as a professor. I have 25 years of experience essentially in this space. And what comes out of my mouth, you believe is true. But when I put something down on paper and I'm presenting it to somebody, I always go find a second source to prove that I'm right in what I'm putting in front of you. Because what I'm saying is one thing, but if somebody else is saying the exact same thing based on some research or some data, then you know it to be true, right? So every single human being has their own perceptions and these types of things. So we have to prove that the data is showing us what works and what doesn't. But the perception is, we have the Georges of the world that are like, you need to be on HGTV, or you need to run billboards, or you need to do these things. Where's the data to support it? And that's what I always go back to them. And I say, all right, George in particular, I said, let's go pull the data on the typical viewer of HGTV and compare it to whom we're going after. And it didn't match. And I said, George, it doesn't match. And he still didn't want to hear it. But we didn't end up doing what George was wanting us to do in the first place. So, yeah.
The data from the owner's standpoint, and I've been through this also, I have made the mistake of extrapolating from a data subset of one, which is how I take it in my media, my advertising, my products, my services, and extrapolating that to, well, I think the other businesses, this is what they want. I made that mistake for the better part of 20 years. And now I find myself saying that, you know what, I broke it down on one basic two-word thing: don't assume. Mm-hmm. And, there's all sorts of other ways of putting it: verify, validate, all that stuff you got to go through if you want to get VC money ever. You got to validate more than anything else. But if you could just start with that, don't assume, and be very, it's almost like an attitude of open-mindedness, and believe the data.
Yeah. Just assume that you're wrong, right? Just go into things and go, maybe I'm wrong on this, but let's prove that I'm right, and you'll be amazed at what actually you uncover.
How your marketing bias can hurt your results. I know this is a tough one for a lot of the owner of the print shop I know. This is how we do it, and this is how we've done it. But he was able to make that. He came over to the data and the data-driven decision model, which is getting easier and easier to do with all of the AI systems around. Final comment?
Just listen to people around you, right? So let the data come to you, ask for help, don't assume things, and just be open-minded.
That's it. That's episode 96. Go to Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Like us, tell other small and medium-sized business folks, hey, there's this podcast. It can help your business. As always, thank you to Adriana Alvarez. She is going to graduate at Purdue Northwest. So this whole podcast network is put together by a student and run by her and other students. And We're just little marionettes being pulled by the strings. Until next time, see you later.